As is in custom and traditions of my people, when I see elders in the room, it is customary that I give permission for my elder to speak. So I look to my elders for permission to speak.
Please.
Thank you. She said, my name is Kweku. It is a pleasure to be here. Can you hit the next slide? What I want to do is just to take a moment to tell you what profound gratitude I have just to be invited to this. When people give you the opportunity to lend you their ears for a moment, I don't take this for granted. And I want you to know that I've written this presentation time and time and time again. If we go back one slide, you see I've already changed the title. Okay. And the reason why that is, go back to the other slide. When I did that, you can hit the next one. The reason why I changed is because as you go over it, you talk to different people and different things happen. And the biggest thing that happened to me in the last couple of weeks was my auntie died. And when she died, it was really hard because I had to speak in Canada. And I was already required to go there, and it was on the same day as the funeral. So I had to make a choice. What do I do? So I talked to my Uncle Conroy, and he said, what would she say? She was fiery, feisty. He said, you better go on do that. And so I went, but I went with a heavy heart. But when I went there, a little bit later, I found out that D'Angelo died. Now, if any of you kind of understand the music realm, this was a 51-year-old singer, but what made this tragic was the child of his mother had just died earlier this year. And their son was 27, so you say he's a grown man. We say childhood doesn't start at 18. And I'm thinking like, wow, the pain of that. But then I started thinking some more. I was coming home on the plane to get ready for this. I just flew in yesterday. A young girl sits next to me. She's 19. And you know how like you get on a plane, you don't really want to talk. I'm tired, everything is going. But she starts talking. I can see she needs to talk. She's coming in town from Seattle. She says, I'm coming in for my brother's funeral. She said he was stabbed by our cousin. And she's talking, and I can see she's going through some things. And I'm talking to her, you know how you're trying to help, but there's nothing really you can do? And I was like, well, are you going to get to the funeral on time? It's 2 o'clock. The funeral was at 2. You told me it's almost 12. She said, my father's coming to get me. And when she said that, I could see like this kind of relief in her eyes, like Daddy's here. And when you start to see this, we start thinking about what the importance it is to have a father. Now, the conference I had to lead, one of my best friends was doing a keynote, and I told her, I said, listen, I gotta leave, I apologize. But what she was saying is she was like, this is a hard time because her father had just died, and he was her biggest fan. And when she started talking about her father, she started to cry. But she was like, I'm gonna do this for him. So when I started thinking about this, I said, okay, you know what? I gotta change this. Can you hit the slide? I'm not going to, for the sake of time, but I had set up a musical melody that was going to be our agenda for what we do. So I had to start it off with a D'Angelo song, kind of talking about him. But then I had a little Jodeci, Forever My Lady, because as we talk about like what we're going to talk about today, I was just trying to get the theme ready. I had Papa Was a Rolling Stone. You know, we started thinking about all of the things we go through. But probably my favorite song that I had on was a song called Just the Two of Us by Will Smith. Where he's talking about, man, he just had this son, and he's crying because he see him. He said, he looks just like me. I wonder what you're going to be. And he's talking about how he tries to be tough, but how he has to love and all of the things that he has to do. But then I started thinking about some other songs. Then I had a little Brian McKnight on there, this One Last Cry. He was talking about this time where he had to move on from the love of his life. And he said, how do I move on? How do I go on? And when I started thinking about this, I was like, these are all of the things that's a part of what we're going to talk about. Can we hit the next slide? In 2014, I was able to write a book with 2 colleagues, Dr. William C. Moore and Dr. Hector Truax. And when we would go around the country talking about this, it was weird because people would see us because Bill was this white guy grew up in Wisconsin, Lake Geneva, and everything that comes with that. And Hector was a gay man from Puerto Rico. So when people were looking at you, talking about jokes when you walk into the room, it was something that was there. But the one thing what we recognized is when we said we wanted to build a better man, we said, well, how do we do this? Because there were so many differences between all of us. But we said, there's some things that go to the base of humanity. And see, we had these 3 I's that we talked about. The first one was like this intrapersonal development. Like, how do I know myself? How do I become the best person I could be? The second I was this interpersonal. How do I then become better with all of my relationships? Whether it's with my friends, with my family, with my colleagues, just with strangers at large. But then the last I was involvement. We talked about for a person to reach the height of humanity, it's not just what you do for yourself, but it's also what you do for others. So we said for the men that we interviewed in this book, we interviewed thousands of men. And what we found out is that when they did these eyes, is that they were able to get to this point. Can we go to the next slide? So this is where we came up with the 5 elements. Well, actually, we didn't come up with it. A Japanese man came up with it from the book of the 5 rings. But when I look at all 5 of these things, it was talking about this is really how we start to evolve as men, as human beings. So even for my ladies in the room, these things are still just as relevant. So when we talk about earth, this is the beginning stage. This is where we talk about a self-awareness. How well do I know myself? When we talk about water, this is where we start to say, okay, I know myself, but now let me start to make this plan. Let me start to come together with what do I need to do to be the best that I can be. Now, you know when we make plans, there's always saying, it says, man make plans, and who lasts? God lasts. Because we think we know until that rubber hits the road, and then you say, oh, I got to do something a little different. So then after that comes this fire stage, and this is where you say, let me what? Start to reshape this plan, and I'm going to work it. So we got plan A, plan B, plan C, all the way to double Z. And I love it because in Japanese culture, they have a word that's called Kaizen, K-A-I-Z-E-N. And it means to get 1% better every day. Every day I'm going to wake up, how can I get just a little bit better? And I had a chance to be the team psychologist for the Milwaukee Bucks. And it was during the Jason Kidd era. And where Jason would come in every day and says, how did you get better every day? And every player would have to talk about what they did. Was it from a physical standpoint? Was it from a tape standpoint? Was it for something that they did just to rest? But the idea was if you can get just a little bit better every day, those small changes makes a big change at the end. When we talk about win, it kind of sounds like what it is. It's like, now we're winning. And when you start to win, what comes with winning? We think about our Milwaukee Bucks. When did they win the championship? What year? 2021?
1960.
That's the first. You talk about the first one. You see how long it was, 50 years in between, from 1971 to 2021. So when we think about that, it's hard to become a champion, but it's harder to stay a champion. And so when we start talking about the win, well, now what we start talking about is this. What happens when you start to get good is you get a little complacent. You think you kind of got it going on. But with the void is the one that goes back into that Kaizen that talks about how can we get better every day. Now what we want to do is take all of those elements and we want to bring it into how is that going to make us a better father. So can we go to the next slide, Beverly? So I want you to think about this. If you can see this chart, I know it's a little bit blurry, but how many of you are familiar with this food chart from acid to alkaline? If you're not, you want to get used to it because we want to know what are we putting in our body. Is this good or is this not good? Sometimes the stuff we think is good, it tastes good, but it ain't good. The stuff that's not good, sometimes it don't taste the best, but we know it's good for us. But now what I want you to start thinking about is this. If we can do this with food, how will we do this with ourselves? Can you hit the next slide? So not when we think about who I am, the key is what? To know thyself. This was done by Imhotep, by Socrates. How well do we really know ourselves? So I want you to ask yourself, the words that come out of your mouth, the way that you act, the way that you treat, now I'm talking about fathers specifically, the words that you spew to your family, are they acidic or are they alkaline? The behaviors that you do, are they acidic or are they alkaline? But even outside of acidic and alkaline, at least if I got acidic, I got something. Sometimes there's no food. So this is the person who's absent. The person who's not getting anything. Or sometimes we got what we call atrocious, and that's the stuff that's poisonous. You go outside, like in our culture now, there's a lot of people who love to eat from the earth. And when they go out, they say, you got to be careful for this mushroom. You got to be careful for this berry, because this one is nutritious. But the one that looks just like it could be not only poisonous, it could be deadly. So when we start thinking about that, I want you to think upon these lines. Your behavior, your actions. Are they acidic or are they alkaline? Can we hit the next one, Beverly? So in our book, the first thing when we talked about our interpersonal development, now I want you to do some heavy self-introspection. What makes you who you are today? And I want you to really think about this. From the things that happen in your culture, from the things you saw in the media, from the things that happen in the society, from the things you saw in your family, how did that influence you? To this day right now, I can count the number of times I drink on my hand. And why do you think that is?
Because you don't drink.
Because my father was an alcoholic. And I saw the pain that that brought. And what he taught me was what not to do. Now, my dad was my best friend. He was the best man at my wedding, so I don't say alcoholic like he was a horrible person. But it was a vice that I didn't want. And it was a saying that I heard, and it mean if you get nothing but this point, remember this. They said the only man in the world that wants to see you do better than him is your father. Think about that. Everybody up in here who's your friend, they want to see you do good. Just not as good as them. Richard is a golfer. He wants his friends to shoot a 68. Always he shoot a 66. Because that's the thing of us, it's a competitive nature. But when we talk about I stand tall because I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors, that's your father looking like, look at him. Because you know you had a part of it, you know vicariously you lived through it. And also we know what? That that's part of your legacy. So when we start thinking about how you were raised, what came up, I want you to think about what was the good things that came into you? What was the things that was not so good? And so when we start to talk about that, we call that in this hierarchy that we developed, that's what we call like this conscious dependent. It's like you had no choice where you grew up. But the next stage we had was what we call conscious transformation. And conscious transformation is when you start thinking, I can do something about this. How do I transform myself? Now when you start thinking about transforming, you're thinking about a plan. What do I do? How do I get better at this? Can you go to the next one? Now if you look at this, I have atonement. We're about the 30-year anniversary of the Million Man March. And I remember when that march was called, that was my first year teaching. And it was like, you got to leave and go to Washington. I was like, well, this is my first job. I don't know if I can leave. They said, well, if you can't leave, just take off of work and watch it on TV. And I remember being glued in front of the TV. And when I heard the message, it wasn't a message like I thought I was going to hear. Because you know, normally when you think about Farrakhan, you think about, oh man, this is going to be fiery, this is going to be controversial. But what he said is, this is a message to the men. He said, what we got to do is atone. He said, first we got to admit that we've been wrong, that we've been doing stuff we weren't supposed to do. We got to confess and we got to repent this, but then we got to make a change. He said, we got to have levels of forgiveness for the people who wronged us. Then he said, we got to get in contact with our divine union. And when I thought about that, I was like, man, that atonement is so key. Because now what I'm thinking is, what did I do wrong? What do I got to do to get better? How is the people that I've wronged? You know, it's always quick to talk about the people who wronged you, who didn't do something right for you. But then you say, who did I do wrong by? How do I get better with that? Can we go to the next slide? Because now we start to think about this plan. You can hit the, this is all going to come up. When we talk about the plan for water, now I want you to start thinking about, hit it all the way up. We talked about how do we become a parent. Now we just heard before, how old you are when you become a parent matters. What's the gender of the child? What's the birth order? Who are my first born children in the room? Okay, who are all the babies? The babies. Who in the middle? Now all y'all got experience in the story that goes with that. And when you start thinking about parenting, you say, oh, how does this matter? If you got like one of those families where you got like that oops baby, they always say what? Mom and daddy let you get it easy. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that. You got this. And why is that? Because as you get older, we just talked about becoming a grandparent, there comes a lot of wisdom. So when you have kind of that oops baby, you almost in grandparent stage, it's a lot of wisdom. But sometimes that also means it's more time. It's another security from an SES, socioeconomic status standpoint. So when we start thinking about all of the things that allow us to parent, I want you to think about now, what's a person's marital status? They say in a home for children, these are the 4 places in the order rank that they have them in the meta-analysis study. They said the best place for a child to be is in a happy, married, 2-couple home. The second best place is to be in a single parent, happy home. The third best place is to be in the single parent, unhappy home. So that leaves for number 4 what? unhappily married parents. How many people say married just for their children? They say, we're doing this for the babies. And that becomes the worst environment. But then what happens with divorce, with co-parenting? Now what happens with co-parenting if it's a good relationship versus it's a bad relationship? And then when we start talking about marriage, we haven't even talked about like if we have polygamous societies or if we have same-sex marriages, all of the things that come from it. Now one of the introductions that we said, how do we provide and how do we protect? And he said it's a different way from what we just provide. We don't just provide money and clothing, but we provide another thing. If you look at the RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan, he talks about some of the things he learned from the 5%. He talks about the 12 jewels. And he said, as a father, it's important for me to make sure that my children get these 12 jewels. He said, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. Then he said, I got to make sure they live in a place where there's freedom, equality, and justice. But he said after that, I got to make sure there's clothing, that there's shelter and food. But not literal clothing, but a shelter of clothing. From a spiritual standpoint, a cloak of protection. The food that I feed them is my words, the things that I tell them, am I uplifting them? Then he says, I want to make sure that they live in a world of love, peace, and happiness. So oftentimes in a capitalistic society, we define success by just material gains. And we miss so many. And that's where the next part comes from when we talk about our presence. We talk about to protect and to provide. But then the question becomes, how much time do you spend? People often ask me, why don't you work with the Milwaukee Bucks anymore? When I was working with the Bucks, my children were small. My son wrote me, you know how you get those little Valentine's Day cards from your children? And there's a picture of me on the cover. I was so excited. But there's a picture of me with a suitcase. Yeah. And I said, this is how he sees me. It's his purity. It's his innocence. It's his love. He said, Daniel is going to work every day. He's doing it. But it's a suitcase, meaning he's absent. I thought I was doing the things I was providing. I was protecting. But the present wasn't there. And I said, if I died, the Bucks will replace me the next day. But my family, what would they do? So now, when I was home, I had to recognize what was the quality and the content of that quality. Because sometimes a lot of people are present, but they're not really present. And I hope as I'm talking, you're thinking to yourself, I'm here with my children every day, but am I maximizing the time? They said they got a study that's going on with that phone. I remember our road trips used to be so fun in the car. We talk, we laugh, we listen, but now everybody got their phone. It's like it's 5 different people in the car, 5 different zones. And we say, how do we break this monotony? So one of the things that we did, you remember during COVID was like a hard time. That's when Hamilton came out on Disney. I think we watched it like 30 days in a row. So we would put on that soundtrack and we would sing the soundtrack to Hamilton all the time. That was one of the things we were able to bring in. And I was like, it was that little twitch of something kind of silly, but it still was what it gave us a shared experience. It gave us a remembrance of a different time. But if you go to the last one on here, we talk about to protect and to provide. Now we got to be present, but what's the real level of passion? Do your children feel that you love them? How many people got teenagers in the room? Okay, come on, let's just pray 1 second. The hardest thing with teenagers is you want to give them this love. How you doing? Good. I was good. Okay. And you're like, you trying to reach them. It gets so frustrating because this person you want to give all this love to, who used to run and greet you at the door, used to do this. We talk about the evolution of parenthood. Oh my goodness, but to see them to change and to see the once relationship that you had go astray, and you know it's developmental, it's a process they gotta go through. They gotta break away from you so they can find their true self. And if you have older children, you see them come back and you be like, ooh, that was a time, that was a time. But we made it, but what makes it is because of the love. But sometimes, those confusing times can create a gap that's never unified again. So when you're going through those tough times, you got to say, how do I still provide this tough love, but this level of discipline that doesn't create a gap where people never come back? Think inside of your mind how many people you know are disunified with their children. And they tell you these heartbreaking stories, how they haven't talked to their child in this long. Or the relationship is not the same. They don't bring the grandchildren by. They don't come by. They don't call. And the whole question is, how do we get better with this? Can you go to the next one? Just hit it all. So when we talk about fire, now this is like we said again, remember this is where you go through it. This is where your plans don't really start to go through as a father. And this is what's frustrating when you try to do everything because the mother of your child and you didn't get along and you said, I'm gonna reach out, I'm gonna be the bigger person. And then your reach out didn't work and it made it even harder. When you did something for your child and it didn't come. But what the fire teaches is how do we get better? Because everything does not work the way we want it to, especially the first time. So we start to say, how do I learn from those lessons? And it's not the losses that teach us, but it's the learning from those lessons. And if you learn from those lessons, they become blessings. How? Because it teaches you what not to do. You look at any scientist, any great scientist, they're not afraid of failures. Because they said it's not failure. I just learned what not to do, which brings me closer to what I'm supposed to do. The question is, do we have the perseverance and the resilience to keep trying and to keep trying? See, that's what the fire is. It burns out the impurities. It's the pressure that makes the pipes. So when we start talking about practice and repetition, how do I keep going over and over? Now this is the thing. Most of us don't look at parenthood like we do so many other things. Think about how dedicated you are with your job. Think about the journals you keep, the notes you keep with the calendars. How many of you really keep a full calendar with everything you do with your children? Now, I'm not just talking about because we got to go to soccer game here, we got this musical thing right here. But I'm talking about a real journal. How many hours did I spend speaking to my child last week? How many quality touch points did we have? When's the last time we hugged? When's the last time I said, I love you? Or when did those continuals I love you start to drop off? Because see, when we do these orderly things in our regular lives, we know how to catch it. But sometimes the things we love the most, we kind of complacent with, and we don't put the same energy and effort. So what I want to encourage everybody today is say, let me become more astute. And I don't care where we're at. I don't care if you have little children, if you have grown children, if you have no children, but people who you surrogate. If you start to think about who are the people that I love, how much time am I spending with them, and how do I get better? Because when we start talking about going through the fire, what we're saying is this is what's going to allow me to become who I want to be. Can we go to the next one? And when we go to win, remember I said this is when you win. Some of you say, well, this doesn't really relate to me right now. I got a great relationship with my children. We have a good thing. We've been blessed. Things are good. Well, that's good because now you can validate what you've done and you replicate it and make sure that you don't stop. Remember we said it's hard to be a champion, but it's harder to stay a champion. Because we get lazy, we get lackadaisical, we stop doing those things. So as a parent, you say, well, why isn't my child as close to me? And I'll give you an example. With my daughter, I used to do her hair. And I didn't know how to do hair in the beginning. But I kept doing it, I kept working it. And I'm thinking I'm just doing her hair, but I didn't realize the love that was going into that, the relationship that was building. And when I wasn't able to do her hair the way she wanted me to do her hair, we lost that, and I didn't recognize what a loss that was. And it took me a while to understand where there was a disconnect, and how do I now rejoin her? How do I rejoin? It's something that seems so effortlessly. But the biggest thing, what I love about this one is here, the enemy of comparison. And it says right here, it says, do not speak bad of yourself, for the warrior within you and your words. It lessens the individual you are. I hear people say, I'm a horrible dad. I suck at this. I'm not good. I try, but I'm not. And I'm not talking about being unrealistic in the things we say. But I'm talking about it always staying positive. If I told anybody in here to hit yourself with your fist, you'd look at me like I was crazy. How many of us hit ourselves with our tongues all of the time? So what I'm saying is to give ourselves some grace. Not make excuses, but give yourself some grace and say, okay, I did this wrong. How can I do this better? That's the Kaizen. I'm going to get better every day. I'm going to learn from my loss. And then we got to have tolerance. You got to understand that, hey, I'm not going to always be like where I need to be, so I got to have patience. I got to have grace. But the other tolerance is this. I don't drink alcohol. Well, how many people are not afraid to say, don't put the camera on this one. How many people drink alcohol in here? Now, when you're young, you drink one beer, you like, oh, you float. You drink one glass of wine, you float. But if you do it daily, it doesn't have what? It don't have the same effect, don't have the same kick, don't have the same bite. So you got to increase the intensity. It's the same thing with our love. You got to understand, my granddaddy used to tell me, he said, don't be too jealous, but don't be too careless. He said, what it takes to get that woman is going to take more to keep her and to keep her happy. And when I said that, I applied that to all of the things in my life. And so now I start to think, okay, if I'm winning, I know what I'm doing. How do I stay here? Can we go to the next one? And this is probably for a lot of the people in here who are the helpers. There's an old saying sometimes, we say, who helps the helpers? Who helps the strong friend? The person who always got it together that can't seem to let anybody else know that I don't really got it together because so many people are looking to me. See, when you get to the void, what you learn is this. If you see the first picture that was on when I was doing the introduction, it was a picture of me and I was holding the world. Now, I drew that picture was drawn actually by an artist in Madison named Jerry Jordan, if you all know that name. He's one of Madison's prolific artists. But he drew this picture of me, and I wanted to show this is my ignorance, my naivety. I'm saving the world, like the audacity, the arrogance. But when I really started to learn the story of Atlas, I was like, oh, this was a punishment from the God. It's like, you got to carry the world. And then you start to look at, like, can you do one more with Sisyphus? And with Sisyphus, he had, this burden. Another punishment from the gods, because they tried to, give knowledge to the people. They say, what you will be condemned for eternity is to push this boulder up the hill, have it fall down, and next day push it back up. And so for my people who are the helpers, who every day sometimes you wonder, what's the use? I do the same thing every day, and it just happens. I started working out in the school system, and I said, oh, I like this. I was a teacher. I said, I'm going to go back, I'm going to become a school psychologist. When I started working as a school psychologist, they was like, hey, well, if you want to get your doctorate, we'll pay for you. So what did you think I said? Absolutely yes. But I didn't really know what I was saying yes to. Because as I went into the special education track, what I started recognizing is all of the students that I was working with was the ones who was like kind of on the hard times, the hard situations. But as I started to graduate and matriculate through my field, work with special education, then I started to see when I went into the type 2 institutions, the type 1 institutions from juvenile correction, I saw that pipeline from foster care, from school to prison. And as I graduated, they graduated. I went from the schools, from grade schools to high schools, to St. Charles, to Ethan Allen, to Rayyak, Racine Youthful Offender Correctional Facility, to Milwaukee Secure Detention Facility, and some of those same people graduated with me the whole time. And I'm just thinking, what's the use? It's like pushing the ball down, pushing it back up, pushing it down. I said, it's a recidivation. How does it stop? And then I read this book called Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. And then when you look at the Stoics, oh my goodness, what they talk about. It's 3 words that stick to me. You probably have heard the first one, carpe diem. What does that mean? Seize the day. That means when you wake up, yeah, it's going to be a battle. You're going to have to push that wall up the hill. But guess what? We built for this. We built for it. So you said, you know what? I'm not going to complain about it. I'm going to do it. Because the next one that I learned was a formula was called amor fati. It means I've come to learn faith. Not accept it, not like it, but I love it. That means if it was been given to me, now I got the strength and the challenge to do it. The first poem or first quote that I ever heard that stayed with me, it said, a dream is in the mind of the believer, but it's in the hands of the doer. You're never given the ability to dream a dream unless you're given the power to achieve that dream. So that let me know whatever my mind thought, if my hands was willing to do the work, I could make it manifest. But it also let me know that whatever came on my plate, that meant it was something telling me that I had what it took to be able to do it. Now, it wasn't just me, like we look in this room, it's a community, it's a village. So I don't have to push this ball up the hill by myself. I got you, I got you, I got you, I got you, I got you. And now you start to say, oh, I'm not by myself. And then the last one from Marcus Aurelius was this term called memento mori. He says, remember you will die. It means all of us going to die, but the bigger question is, how do we live? What's the legacy we leave behind? If you were to die today, what would the world say? Remember I told you that this report kind of wrote itself because of the life I was living? I have a good friend named Dr. Victor Kidd. He works with Major League Soccer, so we would work in a lot of spaces together. September 18th, he's in a tragic car accident. Doctors give him less than 1% to come out of it. He has a 4-month-old child. And I was thinking, he's done a lifetime of work in his young life. But he's got a 4-month-old that's never going to get to know the man that he was. And so when I started to think about that memento mori, remember I said, how do I seize the day? How do I not make excuses? How do when I fall, make sure I get back up? Because I understand that everything that I do is going to have some kind of implication on everybody else. So now when I wake up, it is carpe diem, because we don't know what's going to happen when we leave this room. We have an idea. Some of us worrying right now what we're going to do tomorrow, how we're going to pay this bill, what's going on with this car right now, with this trip we got planned here, and we assuming, we hoping the best, but we don't know. But now when you think about this even more so, bring it back to that concept of fatherhood. We think we got tomorrow to make up. We think we got tomorrow to do something better. How do we make the relationships that we say we love, that we say mean so much to, how do we make that manifest in real life? You can hit the next slide, because it's just what we were talking about here. Self-care. So many of us are helping others that we don't take care of ourselves. How many of us do the proper self-care we're supposed to? If you raise your hand, if you're doing the proper self-care. I see 2 hands. Did I miss some? How embarrassing. How shame on us. And we think what? We giving and giving and giving. But if you give so much of yourself, something is lacking. That means if I don't take this self-care, I'm not really giving the best of myself. Cup full. This is how your life should be. If this cup is full, I can't do this. But with the void, the beauty of the cup is the void in the cup. Because that means something can be poured into it. But what I learned is this, like as humans, if our cup is full, we feel good. If our cup is empty, we say, I still want to give, I still want to give. But that cup is empty, that means it's not the best for you. And so what we had learned in our Sunday school, in Psalms 23, it says, my cup overflows. And if you go to London, and when it's tea time, they have the little saucer underneath the cup. And if somebody overfills your cup, you know what you do? You drink out the saucer. It's okay. That's because it's symbolic of life. When life is so good, you're sipping on the saucer. That means I got an overflow. I got an abundance to give. So this is what I challenge all of you. Fathers, mothers, friends, human beings. Take care of yourselves in the simplest of ways. Of what you eat, how you sleep, what's your diet. Because if your cup overflows, that's how you don't burn out. That's how you get up every morning and push that ball up the hill, because you're always on that. How many of us got their cars close to E? That light about to come on, and wondering if we're going to make it to the gas. That's not a good feeling. And we all been there. My mother told me when I first started driving, she said, don't let it get past half tank. So as soon as it get to half, fill it back up. Especially in Wisconsin when it's cold and stuff got to go all the way up. But, it's not until anybody ever had your car stopped with no gas. Oh, you got to walk to the gas station, you got to wait for AAA, you said never again until the next time. And you play with that fire, but that's what we do. We say that jokingly. You know, we can look at it with our gas tank, we can look at it with our phones. Our phones are pretty full now because it started today. But come about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, when it started coming down, y'all started to get nervous, started looking for outlets. Now we know how to charge our phones. How much more ourselves? Because the better we are for us, the more we can be better for other people. Can you hit the last? Oh, you already went to a conclusion. You there. So when we start to think about these things, when we think about the earth, this is for the beginner. So when you're working with your fathers, you say, hey, listen, who are you? Because you got to know who you are to be able to get better. So that's a beginner stage. You say, we're going to find out, because once we know who we are, we can start to do what? We go to that fire, and we go to that, the water into the fire. That's kind of like the intermediate. And the intermediate is like, I'm learning this, I'm working on this, I'm getting better. But when I get to the wind and the void, that's when we're in the advanced stage. But you recognize it never stops. You know, a lot of times people say, I'm looking forward to retirement. I think the president said, I can't wait till my daughter turns 18, and you recognize that 18 don't mean anything. That's when the college bills started coming in. And when you start to think about that, I'm 53 years old. And before I came into this presentation, my mama called me and prayed for me. Because she said, I gotta make sure my baby boy is ready to go. And I'm the baby, so you know. So I get that love, that treatment boy. She said, even at her advanced age, she said, I'm gonna make sure whatever I got to give, I'm gonna pour into you. So when I start to think about that wind and that void, that's when you're in the advanced stage, but you still recognize, I can do some things by myself. And me and Miss Roz was talking about this earlier. I'm pretty self-sufficient, but I can't do everything on my own. Sometimes I need a brother to lighten on. I need a sister to be able to encourage me. And sometimes we can do that for each other. And so when we start thinking about, hey, what are we going to do for this? What I want you to think about is, what stage are you in? And the beautiful thing is we can be in multiple stages in multiple areas in our lives. Because we're complex human beings, there's nuance to everything. So what I want you thinking about as we start this day, we're talking about a focus on fathers. I want you to fix your focus on how you're going to help somebody. Who is the person that you want to help? And I want you to think in your mind right now, this information that I get, who am I going to be able to get this to? And after this conference is over, I want you to give them that information. Say, the speaker was talking, he said, who do we want to give this to? And I want you to say, I was thinking about you. And see how that makes them feel. But next, what I want you to do is I want you to focus on yourself. So oftentimes as helpers, we say, what I'm going to get, what I'm going to get. Like, I can't wait to stop talking and go into the sessions to get something. Because I want to get fed too. I'm focused on how I can be a better father. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I got to leave at 2 o'clock because my son has his last soccer game tonight at 5 in Milwaukee. So I got to get there. So when you see me leave, understand that's part of my focus on being a good dad after being gone all that time. But I can't wait to get into some of these other sessions that's here. So we're focusing on somebody else. We're focusing on ourselves. But now what I want you to do is I want you to focus on somebody else in this room. Or somebody who's one of your colleagues who you know could deserve this. And you tell them, I want you to get better in this way. I see you struggling. I see you overachieving. I see you overdoing. How do we get you back to where you need to be? Because all of this in the beginning and the end came with what dealing with focus on the fathers. And when we focus on ourselves, the people who we love, the people who we care about, we help make them be the best that they can be. And when we put it in proportionate order, who do we really want to be our best for? What do we do all this work for? What do we strive for? We usually do it for our family. But if your family is getting the least of you from you doing everything, that's not a good thing. I'm going to say these two things as I close. I told you about my daughter, and I try to share personal. I try to share my successes, but I also try to share those lessons that I learned from. She said, you go out, you talk to the community, but you come in and you're tired. I need you to do this, and you need to rest. And I see you recharge and get ready to go out in the day. I said, that won't happen again, baby. That's why I'm going to my son's soccer game, because I'm going to let him know how much you mean to me. And I'm probably going to have to wear this when I'm there. On them bleachers. It's my K&G suit, boy. Nah. Tell me nothing. Real talk, though. I wasn't taking care of myself. And one of my best friends, he's actually my line brother. I see the alphas and the kappas out here. My brother Richard is back there. I'm a cute. But my line brother looked at me and said, you don't look good. And I thought I looked good, but he said, he was looking beyond me. And if you know anything about different cultures and whatnot, there's a term in the African Zulu language, it's called sawubona. Sawubona means I see you. Not like I just literally look at you, but I see you. How many times do we say, hey, how you doing? I'm good. And then we go on. But if you look at a person, you say, ooh, the video don't match the audio. And you're saying you look good, but I see something. And he said, hey, you don't look good. My son's therapist, she's Buddhist, and she said, we're not doing anything for the summer because I'm going over to Budapest. I got to recharge. He's like, you going for the summer? She's like, yeah. And when I said, I do what you do, but I'll never go away for the summer, and I can't go away like that. But I said, you know what, I got to do something. So what I did is I took a 3-week hiatus. First week, I even got away from my family. Came to Madison, actually, got a little Airbnb and just thought, contemplate, do I even want to do this as a job? What do I want to do? Where do I want to go? Once I knew what I wanted to do and I had in my mind how I could do it, but do it healthy, I did my second week of hiatus in the house, and all I did was spend time with my family. Nobody in the world knew where I was at, except for those 4 other people that lived there with me. Then the last week, I actually had to do a conference in New Orleans. He said, how was this self-care? Well, I didn't have to pay for it. They sent for me to go, but I didn't know any of the people, so I didn't have to go out. You know, at the conference you go, I just got a chance to rest, but I reacclimated small to the world. And I'm going to leave you with these things with self-care. What I said is when I come back into the world, how do I not go back into what I did because I feel better? Anybody in here got transition lenses on their glasses? When does the transition take place? When you go outside, when the elements change. But when the elements change, just come back. And so sometimes we can go into a healthy place. But as soon as we go back into an unhealthy place, it goes back. And I said, I don't want to transition. And then I said, you know what? Well, what do? I said, well, then the next thing I said, I need a transformation. Sometimes, I don't mean to sound like I'm about to sound, but I got to say it. Like sometimes people put on makeup, but then they take off that makeup. It ain't the same person. Sometimes a person loses 200 pounds, but that person's still the same ugly. See, sometimes you can have transformations, but they can be superficial, and you can go back. But then when I started reading one of my favorite books, The Alchemist, you know, the legend of alchemy. How do I change lead into gold, this copper into gold, these base elements into something pure? I said, what I need to do is a transmutation. And that means I need to change myself so authentically, so officially that I can't go back, that it's impossible. But that's where the void comes in that last part, because you recognize that every day it's going to be the same. You've ever seen the Zen statement? The man wanted to become enlightened. So every day he would chop wood, carry water, chop wood, carry water. And then he got to a point where he attained enlightenment. And one of the young people came up to him and said, now that you obtained enlightenment, what are you going to do? And what did he say? Chop wood, carry water. So what I recognize is my life doesn't change so much, but my perspective on what I do and how I do things changes. So what I want you to do is I want you to become these spiritual alchemists. I want you to become a person who helps others to transmute, but most importantly yourself. So as you become a better father, as you become a better mother, you become a better friend, you become a better person. It's not a change that's superficial like the transition, or has an outward change like a transformation, but has the ability to come back or just really look good from an outward facing standpoint. But to have a true transmutation where you literally change and you become the best that you can be. So as I say, Sawubona, I see you and I thank you for all that you do. I'll leave you with the words on how I usually greet people, and that's not kupenda. That means I love you. Thank you.